Welcome to Frances Quilts, the site dedicated to the wonderful art of quilting, with a few other fun things thrown in as well. If you like what you see here, be sure to hit the subscribe button. Today I'm continuing on with the mystery quilt that I've been working on over the last few months. It is called the Moorwood Mystery, and it is put out by Meadow Mist Designs. In this month's installment, we are making 4 patches and units that will basically be an Irish chain from how things are looking. And I just want to show you a couple of ways of cutting these units. First of all, in her instructions, she has you just doing a width of fabric of the background and a width of the colored fabric, whatever color you're using. But since I am doing mine scrappy, I decided that I wanted to use a lot of different little pieces rather than one big long piece. So I need 30 blocks in all. So I decided to use 10 whites and 10 blue fabrics, and I'm going to cut 3 subset units out of each one of these pieces. So the first thing, if I'm going to cut this in now into 1.5 inch strips like this, the first thing that I need to do is to get a straight edge on it. I'm going to turn it to the side. I'm going to line up one of my lines along that center piece right there, just snug it right into that center seam and trim along the edge. So there is, now I have a straight edge to be working from. Now I want to trim this down into 3 1.5 inch units. So I can do that by placing my 1.5 inch line along here. I'm checking to see that it's fitting right down the center, and I have a good allowance on each side, and cut. So there's 1 unit done. Let's do the same thing with the 1.5 again, snugging it in there. 2 cut, and then 1 more. Let's put the ruler, snug it in there. And there are my 3 units cut and ready to be used. But let's see if there's a faster and easier way to cut those 3 units. Here we have a similar unit to the one that we had before. I have already evened off this bottom edge down here so that it's all ready to go. And instead of cutting 3 1.5 inch units, I'm going to start out by cutting a 4.5 inch piece. So that's 1.5 plus 1.5 is 3, plus 1.5 is 4.5. So I'm going to place my ruler at the 4.5 inch mark, which honestly is easier to hit than that little 1.5 inch was up here. So I have it at 4.5 inches. Everything is lined up, so I'm going to make my first cut, throw that little bit away. Now, without really moving anything, I'm going to say, okay, now I need to come down to 3 inches. So that is going to leave 1.5 inches up at the top there. And I have 3 inches left, so I'm going to make my cut right there. And then the last one, I'm going to come down and do like I just did before, where I have the 1.5 inch, snug it in there, and make that cut. So again, I have my 3 pieces all ready to go to sew into the 4 patches. Let me do that one more time and talk about why this is a more accurate way of cutting these subcuts. The reason is this: every time I cut off of the bottom here, and this has already been trimmed up, I have the potential of allowing my ruler to shift a little bit so that the subsequent cut may not be exactly square. The way I'm doing it, I only have 1 cut edge that I'm working from each time. So if I start at 4.5, that's my first cut edge. When I come back to 3, I'm still using that same cut that I had made previously. And then finally, when I come back one more time to 1.5, that's the only cut that's a little bit harder to do. And snug that in. And again, I have 3 more ready to make into the 4 patches that she calls for. Again, just a little bit faster way to do it, and I think a little bit more accurate way. And remember that this technique can be used anytime you are cutting subsets out of a strip of fabric. It doesn't have to just be 3 units of 1.5 inches. Let's say I had a whole width of fabric that I was cutting 1.5 inch segments out of. Since my ruler is a 6.5 inch ruler, I could go up to 6 inches. So maybe I cut at 6 inches and then bring it down to 4.5, and then down to 3, and then down to 1.5. So in that case, I got 4 units out of each strip before I had to make a fresh cut. It's just something to think about and something to keep in mind when you're going forward with cutting subsets. Remember, if you like what you've seen, hit the subscribe button on the lower right of the screen. You can also find my blog at francisquilts.com, and I'm on Facebook and Instagram at Francis Quilts as well. I hope to see you again soon. Keep on quilting.